In 1918, the 18th of July, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was born in Vevo, South Africa.
Oh, it's a boy! I'm gonna call him Nelson!
After a pretty tough childhood, he began at Fort Hale College, where he showed interest in running and boxing. Only after a year at college he was thrown out therefrom, because he boycotted to the following voting process of the Stuart Representative Council.
After being kicked out of college, he then attended to an informal ANC meeting for the first time in 1942.
Two years later, in 1944, he courted and married Evelyn Ntoko Mays, with whom they had 4 children.
The next 7 years was Nelson's years in the ANC. He was elected as a national secretary in 1948.
I vote for Nelson as our secretary!
Yeah, me too! You are our new secretary!
Thank you.
However, 3 years later, in 1951, he was nominated and elected as president. I vote for Nelson as our president!
Yes, me too!
Thank you.
Along with Oliver Tambo, a friend, they created the first black law firm in South Africa.
We don't have any black law firms here in South Africa.
Yeah, we should start one. Deal.
The same year, a defiance campaign begins and Nelson Mandela is arrested for violating the Suppression of Communism Act. He sat in prison for 9 months.
1952 wasn't the only year he spent his time in prison. In 1956 he was arrested again. In 1958 he divorced Evelyn Mays and married himself to Nomzamo Madikizela, later known as Winnie.
He was then in 1961 told to go underground in South Africa and in 1962 forced to leave the country for a couple of months to join military training and gain support for ANC.
The summer the same year, he returned to his home country.
In May the year after, he was sent to the prison island Robben Island.
In October 1964, Nelson also appears in what's now known as the Rwanda trial, where Nelson and the others were sentenced to life.
It was not before, in 1985, things started to happen again, when he got an offer from the President of South Africa that he would be released if he renounced violence.
3 years later, he moves to Victor Verster prison, where he most definitely had his worst time, spending 14 months in a cottage. This before being released from prison in 1990 after ANC was unbanned.
In 1993, Nelson was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize together with Frederick Willem de Klerk.
In 1999, after being divorced from Winnie Mandela, he steps down as president and from his public life.
I hereby step down as president for South Africa, and I thank you all for the support.
After 1999, his life mostly consisted of being diagnosed with cancer and going in and out of hospital 8 times, before he in 2013 passes away and South Africa ends up in deep mourning.
Oh, hello.
Hi,
What are you reading?
I'm reading about Mahatma Gandhi.
Oh, who's he?
Don't you know him? He was a huge freedom fighter in India.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard about him.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, a little bit, but I like Nelson Mandela better.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I mean that he dedicated his entire life to the fight against the apartheid regime in South Africa.
I do agree with you. He actually became what was at his first ANC meeting already as a 24-year-old man and became president just a few years later. And as a president, you get to be a wanted man, and many tries to kill you. And I believe that this proves that he risked his life for injustice.
Yeah, I think so too, actually. He went in and out of several prisons during his whole life and spent in total, I think it was 18 years in prison, most of them at the prison island, Robben Island. He was an inmate at several other prisons too. For example, Portsmouth prison, which was a prison with very high security, like in Robben Island. And
Oh yeah, I think I heard that he was at Victor Verster too.
yeah, it was there too. These prisons were prisons with very high security and were housing the worst prisoners in South Africa. And I think that tells something about how bad Nelson Mandela's actions was at that time.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you. Well, as you know, in 1994 he received the Nobel Peace Prize.
No, wasn't that in 1993?
Yeah, I think it
Oh
was.
yeah, sorry, my mistake. In 1993 he received the Nobel Peace Prize, and I think that was the world's way of saying thank you to him for all of his work. And in 1994 he became the first black president in South Africa, and I think that was a symbol of the apartheid regime ending. That he was black was a symbol of that, but since it was Nelson Mandela, I think it was South Africa's way of saying thank you to him for all of his work and dedication.
Yeah, I think all these events proves that Nelson Mandela dedicated most of his life fighting for racism and putting his own life in danger working for the ANC.
Yeah, so I think we all agree that Nelson Mandela dedicated his entire life to the fight against the apartheid.
Yeah, I do.